Did you know? Nintendo was developing a Fire Emblem game for the Nintendo 64 disk drive simply titled Fire Emblem 64. Shigeru Miyamoto confirmed in an interview that work was progressing on the game and that it would most likely release after Mario RPG 2 in the latter half of 1998. It took until that time, however, for the game to be officially announced. By August of 2000, a different game titled Fire Emblem Maiden of Darkness appeared on listings for Nintendo's Space World event, only months before Fire Emblem 64 was cancelled. Maiden of Darkness would release as Fire Emblem The Sword of Seals, but whether or not these two games are related is unknown. It's possible that assets from Fire Emblem 64 were used in Fire Emblem Path of Radiance for the GameCube, as suggested by early unpolished screenshots. That said, an even more complex theory exists regarding the disappearance of Fire Emblem 64. Around the release of the fifth game in the franchise, Fire Emblem Thracia 776, series creator Shozo Kaga left Intelligent Systems to create his own company, Tirnanog. Their first game would be Emblem Saga, a successor to the Fire Emblem series for the PlayStation. However, just before the game's release, the title was changed to Tear Ring Saga, and the in-game emblem items were left unused, though they remain in the game's code. While these changes were likely implemented to avoid a lawsuit from Nintendo, the lawsuit came anyway, and Tirnanog had to pay a hefty fine for violating the law of unfair competition, a law which protects against the unauthorized use of intangible assets not protected by trademark or copyright laws. As a result of these events and their chronological proximity, it's speculated that the cancellation of Fire Emblem 64 and Tear Ring Saga are linked. Although many assume Fire Emblem came to the West thanks to Martha Roy's appearance in Super Smash Bros. Melee boosting the series' popularity, it was also due to the success of Advance Wars. In an interview with Edge Magazine, the director of Advance Wars, Kentaro Nishimura, stated, "It seems that Advance Wars shifted Nintendo's attitude over Western taste. This is understandable, as both games have similar strategy elements and presentation." The first game in the series to come to the West was Fire Emblem on the Game Boy Advance. This game, which was actually the seventh in the series, began the trend of making Western releases of Fire Emblem a bit easier than the original Japanese versions. In the Japanese release of Fire Emblem, titled Fire Emblem Blazing Sword, players can link up to a copy of Fire Emblem The Sword of Seals. If the games are linked, Lin's story, which serves as a sort of tutorial and prologue, can be skipped. The Sword of Seals was never released outside of Japan, so this wasn't an option for Western players. For them, Lin's story is mandatory. Along with that, many of the game's bosses had their stats slightly lowered overall. In the next game, Fire Emblem The Sacred Stones, some of the characters had increased growth rates as well as base stats. Then in Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, the base stats of some units are boosted as well, and the Maniac difficulty is removed entirely and replaced with an easy difficulty easier than the normal difficulty of both games. Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn, however, disposed of this trend and included the normal, hard, and Maniac difficulties, but named them easy, normal, and hard in the Western release, a decision which might have led to the critical complaints about the game's difficulty. On the subject of difficulty, Fire Emblem Awakening came with a bit of controversy over the inclusion of Casual Mode, a mode of play which removed the permanent character death the series was known for. Just as it was among fans, the inclusion was heavily debated within Intelligent Systems. In an interview, Fire Emblem Awakening's project manager, Masahiro Higuchi, stated that he was on the side that we shouldn't include Casual Mode to the end. However, Awakening wasn't the first Fire Emblem game to feature Casual Mode. It was introduced in the Japan-only release, Fire Emblem New Mystery of the Emblem Heroes of Light and Shadow. It's likely that this mode was included as Intelligent Systems was faced with the possibility of Fire Emblem Awakening being the final installation in the series. Due to the declining sales of recent games in the series, Fire Emblem Awakening would be the last game in the franchise if it didn't sell at least 250,000 copies. In response to this, the developers wanted to include as many features as they could, such as downloadable content, marriage, children, a player avatar, and the return of Casual Mode. Having the game take place in the modern-day, real-world setting was even suggested, but dismissed for fear of alienating longtime fans. The game has sold over 1 million copies worldwide to date and broken several previous sales records for the franchise. In Fire Emblem Path of Radiance and Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn, Raisin, Lian, and Volug speak an ancient tongue as demonstrated by a unique font to represent their dialogue. The text is in all English despite how intricate the font looks, so the character's dialogue can be easily translated. This language can also be found in the background of some of the menus in Path of Radiance, which when translated read, "Doubt that the stars are fire, doubt that the sun does not move, doubt truth to be a liar, but never doubt I love." This is a direct quote from Hamlet's love poem to Ophelia from Shakespeare's Hamlet. Fire Emblem Path of Radiance contains quite a bit of cut and hidden content. There's a set of icons from the Super Nintendo and GBA games in its data. Despite the game being on the GameCube, the icons are from Genealogy of the Holy War and on, but don't have the same palette as it did in those games. Path of Radiance is unrelated to any previous Fire Emblem game, so it's likely that these icons were merely placeholders. Path of Radiance also featured the ability to link up to Fire Emblem The Sword of Seals in the same fashion that the Blazing Swords did, but had to disable it in the Western releases for the same reason. The character illustrations from the Sword of Seals are still in the game's data, but cannot be accessed without cheat codes. While stats for many of the NPCs who appear in Path of Radiance can be found via cheat codes, there is also a set of stats for a character named Heather who does not appear in Path of Radiance, but is playable in Radiant Dawn. Fire Emblem contains an impressive amount of references to various mythologies, historical figures, and geographical locations. Marth, from the storylines which take place on the fictional continent of Urchinea, is named after Mars, the Roman god of war. In the continent of Yggdrasil, the setting for genealogy of the Holy War in Thracia 776, virtually every character and location is based on Norse and Celtic mythology. Yggdrasil itself is derived from Yggdrasil, known as the World Tree in Norse mythology. During the desperate development period for Fire Emblem Awakening, the developers entertained the idea of taking the story to the planet Mars, but Higuchi swiftly shot the idea down. This was perhaps a result of the references to Roman mythology in previous titles. The release of Super Smash Bros. Melee helped finalize Marth's name in the West, but not before a Fire Emblem anime featuring a Prince Mars was released in Japan in 1996. The anime is based on the third game, Fire Emblem Mystery of the Emblem, and only consists of 2 episodes. A dubbed and subtitled version of the anime was released in America in 1997, 6 years before the first Fire Emblem game would see the same treatment. It's thanks to this anime that Japanese voice actor for Prince Mars, Hikaru Midorigawa, now does the voice of Marth in the Super Smash Bros. Series as well. That's all for today, but don't forget to subscribe to Did You Know Gaming and follow Did You Know Gaming on Facebook and Twitter. Make sure you also check out didyouknowgaming.com, and if you like this video, check out our other videos. And if you like Nintendo things, I have a series called Nintendo 101 where I do the history of a certain franchise in that company. I did Zelda once. You can check that out. I also do reviews, which is neato. So, thanks. Have a good day. Bye!